You can't keep that there. That was the first thing I heard that Saturday morning, not from a friendly neighbor, but from the harsh glare of red and blue lights dancing across my garage door. It was barely 7 a.m. I was crouched beside my SUV, checking tire pressure, coffee cooling on the porch rail, when two officers stepped out of their cruiser like I'd just parked an airplane in the middle of Main Street. The older one, grey mustache and heavy tone, said, "Sir, we got a call about a vehicle violating HOA regulations, blocking visibility and access." I blinked, half amused. "You mean this vehicle?" I gestured toward the car sitting squarely in my own driveway. "This is my house. My name's right there on the mailbox." He hesitated, scanning the property like he was waiting for a plot twist. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a copy of my property deed, still folded from a refinance meeting the night before. The two exchanged that unspoken cop look, the one that says, "Is this guy for real or just another Saturday headache?" Then the older one turned his head toward the hedge line, and there she was, Karen, president of the Maple Hollow HOA, standing crisp and composed in her pressed blazer, arms folded like she was reviewing a crime scene. She didn't wave. She just called across the shrubs, voice sharp as glass. "He's been parking that thing there for days. The HOA rules are clear: no vehicles visible from the street for more than 48 hours. I felt heat rise up my neck. The officer sighed, rubbing his temple. He said flatly, "He's on his own property. This isn't a police matter." Karen's lips tightened into that smile you see on people who hate being wrong but can't admit it. "I'm the president of this HOA, she replied. "I know the regulations." The younger officer, quiet until now, finally spoke. "Misusing emergency services is a violation. We're closing this call." Karen froze for half a beat, then pivoted on her heels and marched off, the echo of her shoes cracking like small gunshots down the pavement. The cruiser rolled away, lights dimmed, and the street fell silent again. I just stood there, grease on my palms, coffee gone cold, laughing softly, not out of humor, but disbelief. Who calls the cops on their neighbor for parking in his own driveway? But deep down, I already knew the answer. It was Karen, and this was just her opening move. I went inside, grabbed my phone, and started documenting everything: photos, timestamps, officer names, badge numbers. Old habits die hard. 22 years in the Air Force had drilled one rule into me: documentation is oxygen. Every mission, every audit, every inspection, it all came down to who had the better records. And if Karen wanted to turn Maple Hollow into her personal battlefield, she just picked the wrong opponent. We'd moved to Maple Hollow barely 8 months earlier. After 2 decades of base transfers, deployments, and rented houses that never felt like home, this quiet suburb had seemed like the final stop: good schools, brick houses, tree-lined streets, and enough calm to hear your own thoughts. My wife, Lauren, is a pediatric surgeon: steady hands, long hours, endless empathy. Our kids, Emma and Jacob, had grown up measuring life in assignments and airports. For once, we thought we'd found stability. What I didn't factor in was the HOA. Or more specifically, Karen Mitchell, president of the Maple Hollow Homeowners Association for 7 years and reigning monarch of the cul-de-sac. She showed up on our doorstep the very first week, clutching a binder so thick it could have doubled as a doorstop. "Welcome to Maple Hollow," she said, smiling like someone who'd practiced it in the mirror. "We take pride in our standards here." Her gaze slipped past me into the hallway, scanning the moving boxes like she was inspecting contraband. "I trust you'll fit in just fine," she added before walking away, heels ticking like a metronome of control. Lauren shut the door and whispered, "That woman alphabetizes her paranoia." I laughed then, not realizing how prophetic that would sound later. The first notice came 2 weeks after that. A laminated card tucked under my windshield wiper. Violation: vehicle visible from the street beyond 48 hours. Section 7.3 Maple Hollow HOA Bylaws. That night, I stayed up reading the entire document, all 41 pages of small print and contradictions. Section 7.3, as it turned out, only applied to vehicles parked on HOA-maintained roads, not private driveways. So, I drafted a polite email. Attached a property map. Highlighted the correct section. No response. 2 weeks later, Another notice. Grass height exceeds community standard, 3.5 inches max. I'd mowed 3 days earlier. Out of curiosity, I called a landscaping company to measure it. 3.2 inches. Signed, dated, time-stamped. Still no reply. Then came the wreath. Apparently, seasonal decor must reflect active holidays. We had a plain green wreath on the door, neutral, timeless. 2 doors down, the Andersons still had Easter bunnies in their yard. No one bothered them. It was obvious by the 3rd month, this wasn't random enforcement. It was targeted. At first, I tried to shrug it off, thinking maybe Karen just had a personal dislike for my truck or my out-of-state plates. But the pattern grew impossible to ignore. Mr. Patel next door, a retired accountant with a yard so perfect it looked printed, told me he'd been fined twice for his vegetable garden. She said it disrupts community aesthetics, he muttered, shaking his head. But the Crawfords have 3 pink flamingos and a 12-foot gnome. Across the street, Ruth, an ER nurse who worked nights, got citations for leaving a small lantern and shrine on her balcony. They said it looked cluttered, she told me, voice tight from exhaustion. She ignored it. The fines doubled. That's when I started tracking everything. Every notice, every complaint, every friendly reminder. Excel sheet. Dates, addresses, violations. Within a month, patterns emerged. Same families, same timing, same wording. The ones targeted all had something in common: they were new, diverse, or simply different. The retirees, the old-timers, the people who'd lived there since the HOA's founding, untouched. This wasn't about grass height or decorations. It was about control disguised as order. Still, I stayed calm. I'd learned long ago that the loudest person in the room rarely wins, but the most prepared one always does. So, I built my case one file at a time. Because deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. And I was right. One humid morning in late August, a white truck pulled into my driveway, Code Enforcement Department stenciled on the door. The inspector, Rodriguez, stepped out, clipboard in hand. Got a complaint about unpermitted construction, he said. Your back deck. I blinked. The deck came with the house. It's on the original permit. He checked the blueprints, walked the perimeter, and nodded. You're fine, he said. Happens a lot in HOA neighborhoods, same addresses, same complainants. Someone's gaming the system. Before leaving, he handed me a card. You can file a Freedom of Information request. Won't show who made the complaints, but it'll show how many times they've filed. You might find a pattern. That afternoon, I filed it. 10 days later, a thick envelope arrived. 41 pages of data. 7 anonymous complaints on my property alone. All dismissed after inspection. Then I saw it, 5 other homes. Same time frame. Same volume. Same anonymous source. Patel's. Ruth. The Johnsons, a young couple with a pride flag in their yard. Every complaint linked by timing and phrasing. The rest of the neighborhood? Clean record. That's when it hit me. This wasn't bureaucracy. It was discrimination through procedure. That night, I sat in my office, ceiling fan humming overhead, staring at a spreadsheet, red lines connecting names, addresses, complaint dates. Proof. Quiet, undeniable proof. Lauren leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. You're building a case, she said softly. I'm building the truth, I replied. She nodded, though her eyes carried that familiar concern. Just, don't let her drag you into the mud. I smiled faintly. I won't. But even then, I knew it wasn't that simple. Karen had made this personal. And people like her don't back down, they double down. By September, Maple Hollow no longer looked the same to me. The neat lawns, the pastel shutters, the perfectly timed sprinklers, all of it had started to feel artificial, like a movie set hiding a darker script behind the scenes. Karen's latest notice arrived folded inside a friendly newsletter. On the front, a smiling group of residents planting tulips. Inside, reminder: all properties must maintain uniform mailbox designs as per 2021 community standards. She'd attached a photo of my mailbox. Same color. Same dimensions. The only difference. Mine had a small American flag magnet on the side, a gift from my son when I got back from deployment. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. Lauren sighed. She's not after mailboxes, she's after control. We weren't the only ones feeling it. The whispers started, quiet complaints at mailboxes, murmured frustration at morning jogs. Everyone had a story now. The Johnsons had been fined for unsanctioned paint shade. Ruth's balcony light had been ordered removed. Mr. Patel received a letter threatening legal action if his garden expansion wasn't reversed. A war was brewing, not loud, but steady. One evening, I decided to test something. I mowed my lawn again. Cut the grass so short it looked shaved. That same night, another notice appeared. Improper maintenance. Overcutting can damage turf integrity. That's when I realized there was no winning the game if Karen was the one writing the rules. I began documenting everything, but not just in notes anymore. I installed a small camera in the dashboard of my truck, another on the front porch light. If she or her committee ever stepped out of line, I'd have evidence. A week later, the first footage came in. 3:27 a.m. A figure in a beige cardigan walking down the sidewalk, flashlight in hand, clipboard pressed against her chest. Karen. She paused in front of our house, scanning, jotting notes, then walked away. When I showed Lauren, she whispered, "That's not an HOA president, that's surveillance." The next morning, I went to the community mailbox cluster and found 3 neighbors waiting. Ruth Patel and Mark Johnson. Mark looked like he hadn't slept in days. "She followed my husband to work yesterday," he said, voice shaking. "Took photos of the car. Said she was verifying plate registration." Ruth pulled a crumpled paper from her bag, a hearing notice. Karen had called a private disciplinary meeting for her. Non-compliance with Article 5, visual harmony. Patel exhaled heavily. "I think it's time we stop pretending she's just annoying." That was the first moment it felt like resistance, quiet, cautious, but real. We started meeting at Ruth's place every Thursday after sunset. No minutes, no official agenda, just coffee, frustration, and the realization that we weren't crazy. Lauren joined too, between her hospital shifts. "We need documentation," she said. "If she's abusing authority, we expose it through her own rules." Over the next 2 weeks, our group grew. 8 households. Then 11. Then 17. Each with their own file, their own stories, some small, some frightening. A single mother fined for a child's chalk drawings on the driveway. A veteran cited for a flag exceeding approved dimensions. A widow forced to repaint her shutters twice because the hue didn't align with community tone. It wasn't random anymore. It was systemic. Karen had built an empire of intimidation, and we were the first ones to map it. But then things turned ugly. One night, as I came home from work, I found a note under my doormat. No letterhead. No signature. Just words scrawled in blue ink. "You think you're smarter than the system. You'll regret testing it." Lauren wanted to call the police. But I knew there was no proof, no handwriting match, no fingerprints. Still, I filed a report. A week later, the tires on my truck were slashed. 3 neighbors' security cameras malfunctioned that same night. The officer who took my statement sighed, clearly exhausted from similar stories. "She's not technically breaking the law," he said quietly. "But keep documenting. HOA disputes can turn serious if left unchecked." Left unchecked. That phrase stuck with me. So, I didn't just document anymore, I investigated. Through public records, I found that Maple Hollow HOA's financials hadn't been audited in 4 years. Its annual fees, nearly $600 per household, added up to hundreds of thousands, yet no visible upgrades had been made. The trail led back to one name on every authorization form. Karen Mitchell. Transfers. Vendor contracts. Community development projects that never existed. Tens of thousands of dollars in vague allocations. When I shared the files with Patel, his jaw tightened. "This isn't control anymore," he said. "It's corruption." I knew what had to happen next. If we wanted to save Maple Hollow, we couldn't just fight back quietly. We had to expose her in her own arena, under her own bylaws. So, we called for a special HOA meeting. Petitions signed by over 30 residents. According to Section 11.2 of the HOA Charter, that was enough to demand an emergency session. Karen tried to deny it, claiming improper notice period. But we'd learned her game and we were ready. Ruth stood up during the next community newsletter handout and said, loud enough for the cul-de-sac to hear, "We have a right to transparency. We want to know where our money goes." Neighbors looked up from their mailboxes. Karen froze mid-smile. The silence that followed wasn't fear anymore. It was awakening. And for the first time since we'd moved there, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The night of the meeting felt different. Every porch light in Maple Hollow was on, a soft glow of anticipation and quiet rebellion. Folding chairs lined the small community hall, the air thick with humidity and nerves. Karen sat at the front table, posture perfect, hair unshaken by the heat. Her nameplate gleamed under the fluorescent lights, President, Maple Hollow HOA. Beside her sat 2 committee members, both longtime residents, both looking uneasy. And behind them, a corkboard with the HOA's slogan printed across the top. Order is the foundation of harmony. I sat in the 3rd row, folder clutched in my hand, 43 pages of documentation, photographs, and financial statements. Lauren was beside me, calm but unreadable. Across the room, Patel and Ruth exchanged quick nods. Karen cleared her throat. "We'll begin tonight's agenda with roll call." Her tone was brisk, rehearsed. When she reached the petition line, request for special session review, she tried to move past it. Patel stood up. "Point of order," he said. "We're here under Section 11.2. You are required to address the petition first." A murmur ran through the crowd. Karen's smile didn't falter, but her knuckles tightened around the microphone. "Mr. Patel, this session was not approved by the board." "Actually," I said, standing, "it was. By the residents. 32 signatures. Verified." I handed the folder to the committee member on her left. Inside, copies of every violation notice, timestamps, photos, and the ledger showing years of misused HOA funds. Karen tried to speak, but her microphone crackled under the tension of her own silence. Patel stepped forward. "You've issued over 6 to 7 citations in the past year to 12 households. All of them new residents. You've fined veterans, nurses, families, and none of those funds have shown up in the public expenditure reports." The crowd shifted uneasily. Karen's voice sharpened. "Those are confidential management expenses. Routine maintenance." Ruth rose from the back row. "Routine maintenance doesn't include a $12,000 transfer to your cousin's landscaping company, Karen." Gasps filled the hall. Karen froze, eyes darting across the crowd, searching for support and finding none. Her carefully built kingdom was cracking, one receipt at a time. Lauren leaned forward, voice steady. "You've used fear to keep people silent. That ends tonight." The committee chair, a quiet man named Harris, finally spoke. "I move to suspend the current president pending financial review." Another member nodded. "Seconded." Karen slammed her folder shut. "You can't do this. I am the HOA. "No," I said quietly, stepping closer. "You're supposed to serve it." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, hands rose across the room. Majority vote. Karen's face went pale as Harris read the result aloud. "Effective immediately, the presidency of Maple Hollow HOA is suspended pending audit." The sound of applause wasn't loud, but it was enough to shake the air. Years of frustration exhaled in one moment. Karen stood abruptly, eyes flashing. "You'll regret this. All of you." She grabbed her binder and stormed out, heels striking like gunshots against the tile. The door slammed, and with it, the tension that had ruled the neighborhood for years seemed to crack open. For the first time, people talked, really talked. Neighbors who'd avoided each other out of fear now shared coffee, plans, ideas. Ruth volunteered to handle finances temporarily. Patel offered to rewrite the bylaws to include oversight. When the official audit came back weeks later, The results confirmed everything we'd suspected. Unauthorized transactions. Fake contracts. Personal reimbursements. Karen had siphoned off nearly $90,000 over 5 years. She resigned quietly. No apology. No explanation. Just silence, the kind that follows when power collapses under its own weight. That winter, Maple Hollow changed. The rules didn't vanish, but they made sense again. Mailbox colors still matched, but not because we feared punishment, because we agreed on them. Fines became warnings, meetings became discussions, and neighbors became, for the first time, a real community. One afternoon, while trimming the hedges, I noticed Ruth walking by with a cup of tea. She smiled. "Looks peaceful again, doesn't it?" "Yeah," I said, glancing at the street. "Almost feels like home." She paused. "You know, I think that's what it was supposed to be all along, not perfect, just fair." As she walked away, the sunlight caught the old HOA sign near the cul-de-sac. Someone had taped a note under it, handwritten, simple, but true. "No one owns the neighborhood. We share it." I smiled and went back to my work. For the first time since moving in, I didn't worry about a notice on my windshield, or a rule twisted against me. The air felt lighter, free. Because Maple Hollow didn't belong to Karen anymore. It belonged to all of us.